What is going on, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Meta Chat with MetaMatt, where I'll be talking about all things Metaverse, NFTs, crypto, and Web3. So my guest for this week is a scientist running for Congress while using an NFT project to fund his campaign. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Matt West, and of course, I would love to hear about your NFT project.
Sure. So I have been in and out of the cryptocurrency space actually since 2009. At that point, I was an undergrad working on my chemical engineering degree, but I only mined Bitcoin for a couple of days. I got back involved in 2013 when I was in grad school working on my PhD, researching renewable energy and fuel cells. I got an ASIC miner from Butterfly Labs, and I did some Bitcoin mining then. But I got graduated. I went to go work at Intel, where I'd been for 7 years, helping to pathfind the manufacturing process for ever smaller computer chips. And in 2020, I taught myself programming in Solidity during the pandemic. And I joined the ETH Online Hackathon, where Yearn was a co-sponsor, and I became a contributor to Yearn Finance. And so last year, when I became a candidate for Congress to engage with the community of Ethereum and blockchain in a somewhat unique way, given all of the assaults that we've been seeing on our space and all the misconceptions and misunderstandings of this stuff in DC right now. So I worked with a team to build a NFT that was familiar feeling to many of the people in the blockchain world. It was actually a lot of work to build something that was legally compliant with United States financial laws regarding fundraising for campaigns, while also being able to be traded on the secondary market and limited. So when it was finally able to go live, it was really exciting to finally show our art to the world, which was done by a man named Paul Zeter, who's done some pretty famous movie poster artwork as well, like the Dune movie, for example. And yeah, we were really excited to see it take off.
Yeah, that's awesome. The artist that he said Dune, I believe he was like, I think I saw Star Wars and Spider-Man were some of the other plenty of works that he's done as well. And I know that as far as the NFTs go, I know like a portion will be going to the artist, but the proceeds from the mint, those are all donations for the campaign for Congress, correct?
No, 80% are going to the campaign and 20% of the mint go to the artist. All secondary sales go to the artist because we can't have any of that income from secondary sales. That would be a violation of the campaign finance laws.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, so 80 goes to the campaign, 20 to the artist. Make sure the artist gets obviously gets compensated, because the art is really, really cool from what I've seen. For those who are listening who want to check out the art, you can go to cryptobeaver.io. But as far as the campaign, for those who are interested in getting into these NFT, obviously they want to probably know what the campaign's about. But as far as the campaign, for those who are interested in getting into these NFT, obviously they want to probably know what the campaign's about. What they're helping fund. So I know some of them being climate change, economy of the future, healthcare, racial justice, and protecting the seniors. I know there's a whole bunch. I know climate change is one of the big ones for you, especially being a scientist. Do you want to kind of speak on what your plans and goals are as far as that goes?
Yeah, so climate change is absolutely the existential threat of our time. We are in the middle of a mass extinction event at the moment, and much of that is caused by humans and our pollution. So I view climate change as something that we have delayed action on for far, far too long. The first thing we need to do is to pass a Green New Deal to actually provide the framework for an economy of the future that will be carbon neutral, if not carbon negative. We then need to pass the various environmental provisions within the Build Back Bill that was kind of stymied and waylaid there. And last but not least, we need to work on creating a market for carbon emissions, and we need to put a price on carbon. That way, I've played with the simulations, and that is the fastest and most effective way to drive down emissions from companies, because at that point, you're actually making part of their bottom line, or their profitability, the amount of money that they are spending on this carbon tax system. So those are the ways that we should start moving towards this future, because if we don't, we're just going to see worse and worse wildfires, worse and worse storms, hurricanes, tornadoes, drought, famine. It's a real problem. We need to take it seriously right now.
Yeah, I know you earned your PhD studying renewable energy technologies. So as far as that goes, there are different, whole different types of ways of using renewable energy, whether it be like solar, wind. Just you have a whole bunch of experience as far as that goes. When it comes to implementing plans.
So when it came to my research, I was researching new materials and creating new materials to use in high temperature, high efficiency fuel cells. Solid oxide fuel cells are the specific type that I was working on. And basically, they are able to convert either hydrogen or hydrocarbon fuels like natural gas into energy and electricity with a 90% efficiency, which is massive considering that most traditional fossil fuel using sources only get about 30 to 35%. So we're talking over a doubling of efficiencies. So it's what I've been spending my academic career on. But then when I graduated, I got a great opportunity to go work at Intel for a couple of years where I was doing something completely different.
Oh wow! So yeah, so not only do you have the renewable energy experience, I know that you also you're just talking about like cryptocurrency experience as well. I know like on your website here, it says that Web3 is upon us, and that's definitely true. But it says here, but our lawmakers.
Where I was doing something completely different.
So yeah, so not only do you have the renewable energy experience, I know that you also you're just talking about like cryptocurrency experience as well. I know like on your website here, it says that Web3 is upon us, and that's definitely true. But it says here, but our lawmakers are confused about the basic functionality of the internet. Do you want to speak on? Because I know, like you having a NFT project, to help fund the game. Typical, politicians probably just don't even know anything about, let alone how it implements. As far as like your experience and like Web3 experience and kind of implementing that or using that, with your, are you using that, to help your campaigners help the issues that need to be addressed? How do you kind of see that all playing out with Web3?
Yeah, I view Web3 and blockchain as a potentially very powerful progressive tool in helping to enact significant improvements to the way that we go about on the internet. For example, right now, the internet is mostly dominated by 3 or 4 large mega corporations, Amazon, Meta, Google, for example. And these control our entire existence on the internet in terms of like the data they scrape on us, the web hosting services that they use. And it's only because of tradition at this point that we have net neutrality in place. So like Amazon, your ISP cannot redirect you away from Amazon to say some other e-commerce site, or like, Microsoft can't pay someone to redirect you from Google over to Bing. And so because of that, like that is part of what we all assume the internet is, and that's how we've learned to use it. It's very interesting seeing how Web3 is building out, because we absolutely make sure that it goes into a similar, open sort of communication, freedom of information direction, while also avoiding the pitfall of being taken over by a megalithic mono corporation. And when it comes to the current people who are in office, it's very obvious to me that not only do they not really understand the core science behind things like climate change, but they also don't understand technology. There is a very telling hearing on the House Financial Services Committee where a lawmaker, member of Congress, I don't remember his name, unfortunately, was talking about 3 different stablecoins: Tether, USDC, and Magic Internet Money, or essentially DAI. And he was treating them as though they were all the exact same, when anyone in this area basically knows that while the end product may be a stablecoin effectively pegged to the US dollar, the mechanism in how those are developed are wildly different. Circle is already considered to be highly regulated by the US government, and USDC is already roughly considered to be legal tender. So banks can use USDC to settle debt between them. And so that's already a solved problem, because it's proven to be one-to-one backed by hard value. When it comes to DAI, or Magic Internet Money, that is basically an over-collateralized loan. So there is no systemic risk there, because should someone default, they get liquidated, and then there's no more default. It's self-resolving. Now, Tether, we can talk about Tether. Tether does some weird sort of things, and they're very opaque. They don't really like a whole lot of oversight. And so there's some, we can have that conversation regarding how they're seeming to be operating as a fractional reserve, which, yeah, but like the point that I'm trying to get to is that those 3 things should not be conflated to be the same thing, because the mechanism really matters. And the people who are currently in office don't understand that mechanism at all.
Yeah, it's definitely a very forward-thinking way, especially, in politics. I know right now, like you're just saying, a lot of people just don't know, even in general, just don't know about Web3 and cryptocurrency. So it's really interesting, having somebody, running for Congress and who knows all about this stuff, because, it's definitely like everyone does know, it is the future. And I know you're talking about some, I guess, the climate change and, some, I guess, broken system, everyone pretty knows about. I know. What are your plans as far as healthcare goes? I know that's always a big political thing, that issue that everyone wants to talk about. So I just love to know your stance as far as that goes.
Oh yeah, I believe strongly that we need to have a universal healthcare system in this country. There's numerous stories that people can tell, but one that really sticks with me is that my best friend growing up, his family was kind of like a second family for me, and his dad, Chris, fell sick with a treatable disease, but this was before the Care Act. So he knew that if he sought treatment, he would be labeled as a pre-existing condition. And since he was the only worker in the household, he had a stay-at-home wife and 2 kids, they would have lost their health care as well. And so what that essentially meant is that he did not seek medical treatment for his disease because he thought it was in his family's financial best interest if he didn't, which meant that my friend's dad chose to die because he thought that was what was financially in the best interests for his family. And I'm not here to say whether or not that's the right decision or the wrong decision. I'm not here to judge that. But I've seen the effect that that decision that he was forced to make has had on his family through the decades. And that has shaped my philosophy on healthcare fundamentally, that we absolutely need to have a system where a single person is guaranteed access to healthcare in a way that it's treated as a human right, because medical debt is inherently not an ethical form of debt, because no one is able to really make these life-saving decisions in a true free market. Because if you're unconscious and the hospital needs to perform surgery on you, well, you weren't able to consent to that bill, and so they stick you with it anyways. So that's the way I view working towards a universal healthcare system, simply because it's a matter of, in my opinion, just the right thing to do for people.
Yeah, and speaking of the right thing to do, I know that on one of your issues on the site is racial justice. So I'm not really familiar, with what's going on in Oregon and just other states in general, but just in general, just as far as just the countries, everywhere it goes. There's always going to be some issues, when it comes to racial justice. I'd just love to know what your plans are as far as that goes, and just kind of what's going on, in your area as far as that goes.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different things, but really is one of the original sins of our nation in terms of how with racism in the past and how it's still a fundamental issue today. So I view my role as a representative to...
Speaking of the right thing to do, I know that on one of your issues on the site is racial justice. So I'm not really familiar, with what's going on in Oregon and just other states in general, but just in general, just as far as just the countries, everywhere it goes. There's always going to be some issues, when it comes to racial justice. I'd just love to know what your plans are as far as that goes, and just kind of what's going on, in your area as far as that goes.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different things, but really is one of the original sins of our nation in terms of how with racism in the past and how it's still a fundamental issue today. So I view my role as a representative to be empowering people to speak for themselves when they have too often been silenced or not been able to speak for themselves. And I think there is a bill that's currently being investigated by, I believe her name is Ketanji Brown Jackson, regarding the reparations investigation study into reparations. I would absolutely be a co-sponsor on that bill because the damage of slavery and systemic racism has been handed down through the generations. And we absolutely need to start working towards creating real justice. Sheila Jackson Lee is the name of the person. Sorry, I just quickly Googled that. Yeah, so that's the way that I think it needs to, go forward, is listen and empower people to speak for themselves.
So I know that for people who are just tuning in, we're talking with Matt West. He is running for Congress. He also created an NFT project to help fund. So I know that for people who are just tuning in, we're talking with Matt West. He is running for Congress. He also created an NFT project to help fund the campaign. As far as the NFT project goes, were you approached by someone, or because I know you are really heavy in the crypto, the field, so this is something you were this is a great idea, and you went and found an artist and all that, or was someone else hey, have you heard about NFTs? Maybe you can do this, and you looked into it as far as all the legalities go.
Oh no, this is something that we as a campaign that I wanted to do basically from the beginning. This was something we specifically sought out. We talked with our legal firm, we talked with our compliance team to make sure what we could and could not do. And then once we figured out the path that we had to move forward in terms of the actual back-end coding, we found an artist who we were, really loved his work, and we worked with him for a couple of months to build out sketches that ended up being the final result that you can see on the website, cryptobeaver.io. And then we found a actual smart contract developer, because I did not have the time to do it myself as I was running for office. And so we paid them to help build out a bespoke platform to make sure that it was familiar to people in the NFT space, while also being completely, legally compliant in terms of making sure that we're not receiving donations from, foreign people in terms of foreign nationals or people without a green card or non-US citizens.
Right. And as far as the NFT the NFT project goes, is there like a limit? 'Cause I know, like, most projects have, like, 10,000, but like for this, it's because it's more so donating to a campaign. Is there like a limit on them? And what is the price as far as that goes?
Yeah, so in terms of the pricing structure, we tried to break it down and have the price not be any larger than the legal maximum donation that somebody can give to a campaign, which in the United States is $5,800, 29 for the primary and 2,900 for the general election. So that was one of the the top tiers that we had to keep in mind to not exceed that. Otherwise, well, that'd be a financial issue and crime. So we set 0.05 for the bottom tier because that is pretty common. 0.05 to 0.08 are very common Ethereum and NFT, denominations. And then for the top tier, the most rare, since we're not doing a generative, we had to do a specific tier system. We tried to make it not to the maximum, but with some good room in there in case Ethereum, mooned again. So that was our goal. And so we have 10 of the most rare tier ones, all the way down to 1,000 of the tier 5, which is the least rare, most common. And there's just varying grades between them, which are all slightly design themed regarding beavers, because Oregon is the beaver state. So that was the design concept for beavers. Going to Washington to fight back and lobby for blockchain and Web3. So it starts with just the everyday concerned citizen, down up to the congressional person, politician, and then all the way up to like the seal of the United States, but instead of like George Washington, it's a beaver in a powdered wig. So it's really cool. I'm really proud of the design that we went with. Many revisions were had, and we spent a lot of time thinking about how to make this a successful project. So I'm really grateful that you were here to have me on the show and talk about it.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you coming on. Last question actually, just because I do love, like on your site, just everything you're talking about. It's definitely about fighting the the billionaires and the people who are buying the election. Having an NFT project, is definitely a great way of letting everyone get involved. And not only that is these are NFTs, and they're not being typically bought up by billionaires and people trying to like you just said, buy, or like I just said, buy a campaign. So I just love the fact that you decided to make an NFT project for what you're fighting for. And I just want to say I just think this is awesome, and I just really appreciate what you're doing. Not only just for the space, but just
Thank you.
it's just really cool.
Yeah, thank you. We specifically wanted to make sure that we paid, dues to the community that I've been a part of for so long, the Ethereum community. And since we're kind of having this political renaissance here, as we've been proudly apolitical for a very long time, but what we found the last couple of years is that even if you want to not engage in politics, that won't stop politicians from engaging themselves upon you and your community. So we tried to make a sort of crypto native methodology for people to support the campaign in ways that they're familiar with. People are familiar with minting an NFT and then going on OpenSea and maybe selling it or hosting it as their PFP on Twitter or whatever have you. They're less familiar with the concept of going to a politician's website to donate to a political campaign. And so we tried to make that more familiar, more engaging, and give some people like a bit of almost a POAP of their badge of honor, basically, sort of thing of like supporting our campaign, being able to show it off. And I'm really happy with how the artwork showed up and turned out.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty cool to say, because everyone always talks about utility with NFT projects and all that. I think it'd be pretty cool, to say, hey, I help support this, this campaign, and here's the proof, and here's the NFT, and whatever, picture, I guess they decide, whether it be the presidential ones or the common ones, or even like the gold coins or the great seals. This is cool. Like this is like proof that yeah, hey, I really was involved in in this campaign, and in what what you, Matt West, are fighting for.
Yeah, and we specifically wanted to build it as a limited run, sort of a collector's items situation, simply so that once the election is over, which is now in about 15 days, or once they sell out, then that's it. There's no more of that run that we're going to do. So should we eventually win and go to Washington next year, it would be the first NFT project specifically made for the first blockchain developer to run for federal office, and he won, and now it's just it makes it all the more of an interesting story, in my opinion. So in terms of utility, I mean, that's kind of it. It is a badge of honor to show that I supported this person's campaign. I was here at the beginning, and now they're in Congress and they're fighting for our community even still.
Yeah, I do like that, and as an investor myself, I definitely do see the value in that. Like you said, like right now, you're running for Congress, but like who knows, in the future, if you win, and so on and so forth. These badge of honors, these NFTs, it could really end up being worth something because hey, like I was there in the beginning, and then look where he is now, and that NFT. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see whether that takes off. I imagine it as like, campaign memorabilia from the past. Imagine if you had one of the first T-shirts minted by the Obama campaign, or Nixon, or well, maybe not Nixon, Reagan. Okay, better choice. About having these memorabilia back in the day of like that campaign can become a collector's item, and there's people who want to have that for whatever reason as collectors. So this is just moving that to a digital space. But so yeah, it's been absolutely phenomenal talking with you all tonight. Truly, thank you, MetaMatt, for having me on the show. I do need to head out and knock on some doors and make some phone calls because the election for the primary is in 15 days. So it's really down to the wire here.
That's awesome. For those who are listening, you can check out cryptobeaver.io. That's where you can go and support this campaign and get one of the NFT, the Crypto Beaver NFTs, which will, but if in 15 days you do win, which could be really a great collector's item that could be worth something on the secondary market. So thank you so much for coming on. We really do appreciate that. And for those who are currently listening, we will be having this all recorded and posted. I'll be putting on all over YouTube and social media. I'll be posting all those links on my Twitter as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again. It was an absolute pleasure to be here.
Likewise. Thank you so much.